This is to advise that notice of the time, date, location, and the extent known agenda subject meeting was prominently posted in a public place reserved for such or similar announcements transmitted to the Times of Trenton, the Princeton Packet, West Windsor Plains Borough News, and filed with the Township Clerk, all on May 12, 2022. Good evening, Cindy. Would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Applicant?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mandel?
Here.
Mayor Maronte?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Clark?
Here.
Chairman LaFront?
Yes. Thank you, Cindy. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment about something that is not on the agenda? Not on the agenda. Please come forward. Please give us your name and your address.
Yeah, sure. My name's Warren Metlack. I live at 5 Stoneleigh Drive in West Windsor.
How do you spell your last name?
Mitlak.
Thank you.
Go ahead. So good evening. I'd like to request that the planning board meetings to be live streamed and made interactive on the internet using Zoom or a similar technology. I have heard a number of people in town that have already made this request. Can the planning board make a statement on their position on this so that the public knows where you stand? For example, are you planning to do it? If not, if yes, when will it start? And if no, why not? Is it too expensive? You don't see the benefit, or was there some other reason? Along the same lines, I want to ask the planning board to consider upgrading the technology used at this in-person meeting. I believe that all the documents that are be used in tonight's meeting are already digitized. Can the planning board set up one proper TV monitor or screen in the front of the presenters to display their documents? I don't think 2 stands to display posters at the edges of the room are as effective. In addition, if the presentations would be from a computer, that would already make it easier to have the meeting live streamed. Thank you.
Jerry, would you like to respond to the speaker's question about our meeting format?
Yes. Yes, and I'd ask Sam to jump in on this as well. Just being able to have a Zoom platform and a live presentation at the same time is very difficult to do, and it takes more manpower, frankly, and person power than we have. But Sam, do you want to jump in?
What we have done, we have checked with the municipalities, the zoning board attorney, engineer's office to find out if any other towns, any other state land use boards, not township councils or committees, but planning and zoning boards do what's called a hybrid meeting where there is in person, and then we also have this similar technology where we get questions from the public through Zoom or through the telephone. And municipality says they were not aware of what other town that does. We just do not have a staff for that, even if we wanted to do that. Again, no other town that we're aware of land use board conducts the hybrid meeting.
Thank you, Sam and Jerry. Sam, would you also care to comment on the speaker's question about the presentation mode that we use?
It's up to the applicant whether they want to use digital. We have a screen that use digital before and other presentations. It's up to the applicant. No code or ordinance requires that to be done. If the applicant wants to do digital, we have a screen that we pull down. We can bring a projector in. We've done that before.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak on an issue that is not on the agenda for tonight's meeting? All right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Good evening. Terza Warman, also 5 Stoneleigh Drive.
It's a family affair tonight.
It is. The girls are in the city, otherwise they'd be here. Just as a follow-up, Sam, has the request been made of the applicant that they digitize the material so that it can be live streamed? Because it was my understanding that other township planning boards are doing that.
Just so you know, here's the exhibits that they're showing tonight are on the township website.
No, I know that. I understand that, but I mean, if people who can't be here, I mean, we have a surge right now, sadly, in COVID, right? We're experiencing it in our schools.
There's please speak into the
Sorry,
microphone
yeah.
and face forward.
Sorry.
Sam will hear what you're saying.
Yeah. We are experiencing another surge in COVID. We're experiencing it here in our community. My question is, has the request been made of the applicant that this be digitized in real time? Now, I know we can look at it on the website. We've all done that. But so that it be digitized in real time so that it can be live streamed for people who cannot be here tonight.
We have a camera that is videotaping the meeting for subsequent broadcast on the website. That camera is in a fixed position. It could not rotate to capture the vision on a screen. So the benefit of using a screen is strictly for the people who are in the meeting room. Now, given that, as Sam has said, the applicant has a choice of whether to do a visual with screen or just boards that are put on the easels. Is that responsive to your question?
I suppose, just as a point of information, I don't want to take up the whole night here. It's my understanding that other planning boards do live stream so that people who cannot make it in person can watch in real time. And I would suggest maybe you take that up, Jean, with the applicant and with Mr. Muller.
As Sam has answered, we have checked with the League of Municipalities, and there is no other municipality that's holding land use agency meetings in dual format. Those municipalities that are using Zoom may very well be using what you're suggesting, but our meetings are live. You're welcome. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to make a comment? Thank you. Well, we will go forward then. Chris, the ball is in your
Yes.
court.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We left off going through our testimony. We just finished our acoustical engineer, and we would now like to turn to our traffic consultant, Carl Pankey. Carl was sworn in previously. You're still under oath, but we need to go through his qualifications.
Good evening. Is this picking up all right?
Very well.
Very good. For the record, my name is Carl with a K, Penke. P as in Peter, EHNKE, Vice President with Langen Engineering and Environmental Services located at 989 Lenox Drive in Lawrenceville, New Jersey. By way of qualifications, I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Villanova University. I am a registered professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, as well as numerous other states. My license is in good standing. My area of expertise over the last 35 somewhat years has been traffic engineering, and I've appeared before this board many times in the past and qualified as such.
Is there any reason for the board to object to this witness being an expert? So be it.
Thank you, Carl. Can you tell us about the site and what you've done in terms of a traffic review and study?
Certainly, if the board can bear with me for a little bit, I think I have a bit of material to cover this evening. So just in the general basics, more for the public that's here. The role of a traffic engineer in a project, a land use project, is multifold. Our involvement starts in the early planning of a project, in the design of the access, circulation elements of a project. And then it also evolves to an evaluation of the traffic impacts of a project, which is documented in a traffic impact study that is generally submitted for review by the jurisdictional agencies. In this case, the jurisdictional agencies in charge of on-site circulation and access is the Township Planning Board. The adjacent roadways are under the jurisdiction of Mercer County and the state of New Jersey. A traffic impact study was prepared and submitted with this application for consideration by the board and their professionals. It is most recently revised to April 7th of 2022. With regard to just a little bit of background before I get into how the traffic study is prepared and what it contains, in preparing for the design of this project, certainly one of the aspects that is involved is getting familiar with the site, meeting with jurisdictional agencies to discuss various items, concerns, plans for the region, and then basically sampling and understanding the roadway system. With regard to the site, I am very familiar with the site. I have been working on planning on this site for probably over 17 years for different landowners on the property. And over that time, I've accumulated a lot of information with regard to the property frontage, the surrounding roadways. I'm also very familiar with the site as it's in part of my daily commute. So I am familiar with the traffic patterns, the flows, the regulatory signage and conditions that surround this particular site. So in preparing a traffic impact study, there are several components to it. In general, the purpose of a traffic impact study is to evaluate in terms of the jurisdiction of the planning board that we are designing and developing safe access, both from an operational standpoint as well as from a geometric standpoint. The traffic study also provides information as to the distribution of traffic and the relevant impacts on the immediate surrounding roadways. We do that by sampling the traffic on the road system to develop a sort of a sample in time of what are the traffic flows on a road. Traffic does vary generally on given days, but overall on any given day, you'll see the same general levels of traffic, the same general patterns of traffic. As I testified a few months back before this board, the last couple of years has been sort of interesting for traffic engineers because of COVID. There has been, quite frankly, quite a reset in traffic volume data, and we just seem to be getting back to what we would consider the new normal, which actually we're finding is quite a bit lower than the traffic flows we were seeing in the past. Regardless, in order to prepare this traffic study, we had the advantage of a significant amount of data that was available on the surrounding roadway network. Our data that was available dates back to 2005, includes data from 2007, 2011, 2012, 13, 16, 17, 18, 19, and as recently as 2021. That data really comes from data that I've had from looking at this property in the past. It has data from different traffic engineers that have been involved with the development of the Costco site, development of the Quaker Bridge Mall, and other data collected over the years in the area by the Delaware-Raritan Valley Planning Commission, as well as from the Department of Transportation. So we've been able to utilize all that data to develop a reasonable sampling of what traffic flow is or was on the roadway system. I would say that current traffic count data is still showing quite a dramatic decrease from where we were several years ago on the roadway system. Once we have that data, then the next general step in a traffic study is to project the amount of traffic that a given project may generate. And in doing that, traffic engineers refer to a source document known as trip generation. It's a publication of data managed by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. It is a national database. It does include New Jersey data as well as data from throughout the country. It is the recognized source document by transportation professionals to prepare projections for traffic associated with new development. It is basically an accumulation of traffic counts that have been conducted at similar facilities, evaluated, plotted, so that we can use that in order to estimate what might be generated by a new project. So we've had that source reference and to use for this particular project. We then go through a process of estimating where our traffic may come to and from. In this particular instance, there is many routes to travel to the site. There's probably 5 cardinal directions where traffic will dissipate to. And we use demographic data to evaluate where workers might be coming from that will work at this complex. We look at the existing traffic patterns to verify that data. And then we look at the use and what its positioning is in the market to understand the general flow of traffic to and from the road system. And then we correlate that to our access and circulation system. And that's all documented in the traffic impact study. Finally, we go through a modeling of the traffic. There are modeling models that are used in order to evaluate the operation of a roadway based upon the geometry, the regulatory device, whether it be a stop sign or a traffic signal, yield sign, or uncontrolled. And the models are relatively complex. But we use those models, plug in the data and the projections that we make, and evaluate the operations of the roadway. And from that, we can conclude the relative impacts of the traffic associated with a project such as this. And again, all of that is documented in the traffic study. If anybody's had a chance to look at it, it's a rather voluminous study in this particular case. It is voluminous because, as you're aware, and as my partner, Mr. Weisner, testified to at the last meeting, this is a project with multiple buildings that'll be built out over time. And to sort of evaluate some major steps and times, we took a couple of positions, what we've called phase 1, and an assumption as to the conditions that'll exist at that point, phase 2. And then for this particular project, while the application for full redevelopment of the tract in question is not currently before this board, to ensure that the roadway system and access that we were developing would work at full build out, we also took a look in the traffic study of what would happen if a scenario that occurred building out the zoning with the commercial office hotel that's called for in the PCD zone. And it's probably a really long range look as this property will develop over many years. So a couple of things. Cap off.
Could you confirm that you used pre-COVID numbers for the traffic?
Yes.
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 And about what year are we talking about?
We've done that, yes, and then we projected that forward. So we've got a very conservative look as to the traffic flow on the roadway. We're probably over projecting the conditions on the site.
And also you said you made an assumption about the customer or use for these warehouses. Could you share with us what you were assuming?
Yes, if you bear with me, I'm going to walk through that as we go forward. And I was just moving into that aspect of it. So with regard to this project, as you're aware, we're developing warehouses, a total of about 5.5 plus million square feet of warehouse space. In the warehouse logistics industry, there is a range or some broad categories of uses. This particular use in the development of this site, as described to you in the previous meeting, are fairly large buildings, highly mechanized, low levels of employment, not a significant amount of parking provided. In fact, the ordinances are really on the low range of what parking is generally provided. And they would fall into the category of what you would term a high cube transload warehouse distribution facility, which is a relatively low traffic type generator. There is also other categories in ITE, which is just considered warehouse. There's data that's straight warehouse, which is a little bit of a different database and considers a little bit higher levels of employment. And then there are other categories that are not being considered here, such as a sortation facility where you have very high levels of employee employment and very high levels of parking. For this traffic study to be conservative in our analysis, we actually use data under what's known as Land Use Code 150, which is warehouse. It's probably slightly higher, or it is slightly higher than what these facilities actually fit into, the high cube transload. And we do that to test the road system, to make sure that it's going to work. And we do recognize that there's some variation in employment positions in some of these buildings. So we want to build in a little bit of conservativeness in our analysis. So we've done that. If you've had a chance to read the traffic study, the numbers are in there in terms of what we anticipate at the full build out of the 5.5 million square feet. And basically, we estimate that in the morning peak hour, a little over 720 vehicles will travel to this site and enter the property with about 200 vehicles on their way out, a little more than 200 vehicles on the way out. And that's an hourly volume. It's the hourly volume that'll occur coincident with what we anticipate the highest morning peak hour, commuter hour to be on the roadway. Because as a traffic engineer, we're looking for higher on top of higher. So we're looking at the worst hours of the day. And during a weekday, you also have that evening commuter hour when people are returning from work, starting to go about their business, whether it be entertainment, shopping, and so forth. During that period, we estimate that we would have a lower inbound period, obviously, because the warehouses are winding down. And it's about 280 or so inbound vehicles and about 721 outbound vehicles. One of the things that I'm sure this board is struggling and the public is struggling with is the size of this project. It's clearly a big piece of property. Combined, it's probably larger than Quaker Bridge Mall, Mercer Mall, and Nassau Park combined in terms of property area. And they're big buildings. We're talking about 5.5 million square feet. But from a traffic generation standpoint, they're actually very moderate traffic generators. And I'll give you in a minute maybe something to help you put the traffic and the buildings into context. But one of the reasons why that traffic generation occurs that way is because of the nature of the business. As you heard from Mr. Porsick at the last meeting, the tenants do vary, and the tenants' operational characteristics vary. Some of them are single shift daytime tenants, some of them are 24 hours, but they all run their shifts slightly different. Some will start at 6 in the morning, some will start at 6:30, some will start at 7, some will run 6-hour shifts, some will run 8-hour shifts, some will run 10-hour shifts, and some will run 12-hour shifts. And the advantage of that is, unlike an office complex like Carnegie Center, where at least it used to be, you go to work at 9 and you come home at 5, and you had those peak loads that we had to deal with as traffic engineers. The traffic tends to spread out more and ebb and flow through the morning hours and in the evening hours, and depending on if it's a 24-hour operation, later into the evening and into the nighttime hours. So there's a extreme advantage to that. So as I said, I wanted to try to put this project a little bit into context with the surrounding land uses, because as I said, I know this is extremely difficult to look at these big buildings and the site plan that we have, and I'm not imagining it's some sort of incredible traffic generating a nightmare, because it's not. So some of the comparatives I wanted to give you is all 4 quadrants of this area of Quaker Bridge Road interchange are developed. We have Nassau Park Pavilion, Mercer Mall, the Quaker Bridge Mall, which granted right now isn't fully tenanted, and Costco. But to give you some statistics, as you've heard, this project is proposing about 2,200 spaces to support the entire 5.5 million square feet. At Nassau Park, there's over 4,900 parking spaces. At Quaker Bridge Mall, there's over 6,650 parking spaces. At Mercer Mall, there's 2,300 parking spaces. And at Costco, there's a little more than 750 parking spaces. So it gives you sort of a context of the parking comparative. I thought what it was also important is to maybe give you an idea of daily generation of the project. And this particular project, phases 1 and 2, when it's completed, will probably generate on the order of, over the course of an entire day, about 4,000 to 4,100 entering vehicles and then exiting vehicles. By comparison, Nassau Park is generating close to 19,000 vehicles entering and then exiting during the course of the day. Quaker Bridge Mall, when it's fully occupied, granted Sears is gone and it's not what it was, is generating over 17,000 vehicles per day. Mercer Mall, 10,000 vehicles per day, entering and then exiting. Costco itself, Costco with its gas station, entering and exiting the site is about similar amount of traffic that will enter and exit this project on the course of the day. So basically, we're about 22% of the total daily generation of Nassau Park, 24% of Quaker Bridge Mall, 41% of Mercer Mall, and call it a wash with Costco. To be fair, with Costco as a retail facility, some of that, particularly the gas station, is captured from the passing roadway stream. But in terms of the total entering and exiting traffic, it's roughly going to be the same magnitude of traffic. So I just thought that those were interesting statistics to try to get some perspective with regard to what's happening on the surrounding uses. So with regard to the project itself, there's a few things that we want to talk about. Certainly, as we've indicated, we've met with NJDOT. We have an access permit application or street permit application in with them. We've informally met with Mercer County a couple of times and have just recently filed a full application with Mercer County. We've met with New Jersey Transit and we've met with your professionals. And the feedback that we've received during that time has, basically been factored into the design of the project and the substantial road improvements that are proposed associated with this project.
We need to label this exhibit, please.
It's A4. So to walk through the results of the traffic study and what it has translated to, there's a couple of pieces of information that the board should be aware of. One, with regard to Quaker Bridge Road and Clarksville Road, those are both county roads, arterials in our township, arterials in the county. The county has what is known as a mobility plan. It's a county-wide plan. In that plan, they have defined the roadway sections that they ultimately want to see built out. That includes both vehicular accommodation as well as pedestrian and bicycle accommodation. And early on, the county provided that information to us. We discussed the mobility plan with them and their bicycle plan and have incorporated that into the design of the project. I'm going to refer back to Exhibit A4. I'm going to start by just describing the overall improvements that this project will ultimately construct by the end of phase 2. We'll start with Clarksville Road. Everybody is familiar with Clarksville Road in this room. It's an existing 2-lane road, was just recently repaved, has basically a 2-foot shoulder and a 12-foot lane in each direction. The county's mobility plan requires the developers along the frontage to widen the road to an ultimate section that's 5 lanes plus shoulders. So in effect, at the end of construction, there'll be a center turn lane with grass medians at appropriate location, 2 travel lanes northbound into town, 2 travel lanes southbound into town, a 10-foot shoulder on each side of the road. And then beyond that, the way the county sets up an accommodation of bicycles and pedestrians is they require a 5-foot grass strip and then a 10-foot path to be constructed. So along both sides of Clarksville Road, there'll be that 5-foot grass section and a 10-foot path for pedestrian and bicycle accommodation. That sets up our frontage and our opportunities for access. And I'll move on to the access in a little bit. Along Quaker Bridge Road, similarly, the mobility study calls for widening. The traffic study actually identified the need for some additional widening to deal with some substandard conditions that exist out there today, particularly at Quaker Bridge and Clarksville Road. Anybody that's familiar with that intersection knows that particularly during the PM peak hour, the left turn to Clarksville Road just does not accommodate the traffic that wants to make that left. It's got a short queue and a very short cycle to that, and it ends up backing out of the lane. So associated with this project, our frontage is roughly just short of a mile long. We will be widening from just about where the office, the lawyer's office is. We'll be widening in the what I call the westbound direction. And for purposes of my testimony tonight, I consider Clarksville Road north-south, Quaker Bridge Road east-west, and Route 1 north-south.
Carl, excuse me. The lawyer's office to which you referred is very adjacent to the Amtrak lines.
Correct. So just beyond that is where we start our widening along our frontage. And we'll be widening to add a third lane in the westbound direction with a 10-foot shoulder along the entire frontage. And then as I've indicated, the county bicycle and pedestrian plan requires the further widening to provide that 10-foot path along the entire frontage. So we will be providing a 10-foot pedestrian path along that entire frontage, pedestrian paths along both sides of Clarksville Road. We will also be reconstructing the signal at Avalon Way and reconstructing the signal at Clarksville Road to modern standards. Those signals will include the proper accommodation for pedestrian crossings and pedestrian safe landing areas on both sides of the road. None of that exists today. Along Clarksville Road, we will be lengthening the storage area for the left. And because there are two receiving lanes being built on Clarksville Road, we will be taking over the concrete median that's there and creating a double left, which at the end of the day leaves that intersection operating better than in the condition that exists today. Along Route 1, as I said, we filed an application with the Department of Transportation. We've recently received our first review letter from the department. The department probably is going to be our longest lead time in terms of application processes. It's just the way it is with the department. They have no time clock. There are a lot of subject matter experts at DOT that'll be involved with the review of this project, from geometrics, from traffic engineering, to their ITS guys, because there's fiber optic lines along Route 1 that we'll need to deal with and address in the widening. So the fact of the matter is at DOT, capital projects take precedence over the developer projects. And it's not unusual that we could be in these processes from 1 to 2 to 3 years sometimes in those application processes. But what we filed with the department is a solution that takes the existing service road, the one-lane service road on the northbound of Route 1 that ends today just about south of where the old Nassau Park jug handle is. And we're extending that about 2,000 feet north, just past the driveway for the extended stay America, to improve that weave section and that merge section coming from the Quaker Bridge Road interchange. And then between the private street, the spine road that's being built, which is basically aligned with what on the master plan of West Windsor calls a master plan road, we'll be constructing an accel decel lane between the acceleration from Quaker Bridge Road and the decel to the private street that's being constructed. And please forgive my shaky hand. It's always been that way. So that's a substantial improvement that's being constructed along that segment. So those are the major improvements that are
Carl,
being.
excuse me. From the ingress to Route 1 North from the master plan road, as we call it, how far north on Route 1 will the acceleration lane be created?
So basically, the existing service road acceleration merge lane from the service road ends just south of where the old takeoff was for the Quaker Bridge, for the Nassau Park Boulevard jug handle. That's being extended across our entire frontage up to the extended stay America driveway, and just beyond that is where it'll then merge back in. So in effect, it'll be about over half a mile of auxiliary lane available coming out of the Quaker Bridge Road interchange. And then the acceleration lane that comes in from Quaker Bridge Road will also be extended with a shoulder to the outside to end at the right turn in to the street, creating a multi-lane section in order to accommodate the movement of traffic from Quaker Bridge Road and the movement of traffic to the private street. So then with regard to access to the projects, once we've established what is occurring on the adjacent roadways and the needed improvements that are occurring at that locations, we then look to design our access. And part of the influence of our access design is the master plan, the township master plan, which talks to a street system being constructed from Quaker Bridge Road at Avalon to Route 1. And we've adopted that and incorporated it into the design of the site. So you can see the connection that'll occur at a traffic signal at Avalon Way. So we're not introducing any new traffic signals along Quaker Bridge Road. We're taking advantage of the existing signals that exist there. That'll extend into the eastern campus and then serve and feed into the various loading dock areas, parking areas, and so forth for the warehouses on the eastern campus. It'll connect to Clarksville Road. At Clarksville Road, that'll be the only signal that'll be constructed at Clarksville Road, which will provide for the safe movement of traffic in and out of that spine road. And then that spine road will be extended to Route 1, where it serves as a right in, right out. Our predominant access connections are basically to Clarksville Road and Quaker Bridge Road, and most of our traffic is really connecting to those systems because it gets us to the regional roadway network. The right in, right out street from Quaker Bridge Road has a more minor function because it is restricted to right in, right out. It actually becomes more important in the future development of the build out of the PCD track because it is the front door to the office and hotel that would be sitting up in that location. The remaining access for the site is a series of just connections, driveway connections from the warehouse to Clarksville Road. Each of those connections, there's 4 of them, one at building B1, one at D1, one at C1, and one at E1. And those driveways will be connected and provide for right turn movements out only because all left turns will be directed to the traffic signal, which is the safest way to do it. Left turns in will be permitted at each of those driveways because we do have a wide median and they function appropriately. And right turns out are permitted at each of those driveway connections. So the access to the site.
Excuse me, did you say that left turns will be permitted in the non-regulated driveways?
No left turns. Left turns in is permitted. No left turns out of any of those driveways.
But there would be a left turn in.
It would be
Somebody,
left turns in, correct.
so they're not just right turn in, right turn out.
That's correct. Left turn, because we
Okay,
do have a
that's not
median
the
and
way
the
I-
ability to create the storage lane at those locations. And the analysis shows that those function appropriately and safely. So that's basically the connections. We have, again, close to 0.8 miles, 0.8 mile of road frontage, and we have very limited access proposed in order to control points of conflict with the predominant traffic flow occurring at the traffic signal with Clarksville Road.
You've mentioned a lot of applications to DOT, to county. Has any of this been approved at this point?
No, as I said, we have a application with DOT. We have received preliminary comments, some design-related comments, some questions on the traffic. We're in the process of preparing additional information to submit back to the state to advance that process. With the state, we're in what's known as a 2-step process with them. The first step is really the traffic information and conceptual layout of what is proposed for them to review. We do that because for them, this is a rather large application. It has complicated widening along the frontage. So we look to get feedback on the traffic, the layout, before we proceed into detailed design so that we're not spending a lot of time redoing work when we get into the actual heavy design. So as I said, that is probably a multi-year application process with the state because of the way that basically functions. With the county, again, since the outset of this project, we've met informally with the county. We've been providing information at the county's request for their evaluation. And we've just recently provided to the county a formal application to advance that process coincident with them.
Carl, does that formal application to Mercer County include the signalization of Lawrence Station Road?
Yeah, so a couple of
I know you're
things.
going to discuss that further, but I just wanted to, while you were talking about the application, I wanted to ask that question.
It includes the traffic study, which with our recommendations and identified improvements. And there's a couple of things that are discussed in the traffic study. So with regard to Lawrence Station Road, when in talking to the county, what they had advised us is that in 2016, they processed an application for development of the parcel next to the Costco with a Lidl. That project hasn't gone forward yet, but it did receive approval. Associated with that, the county worked with Lidl or the applicant to provide for a road connection that basically relocates Lawrence Station Road between the Costco gas station and the Lidl and provide for ultimately a traffic signal at that location. That's a discussion item that has to continue with the county because we do not know when or if that application will go forward. Our traffic study has identified and proposed and analyzed the potential signalization either on an interim basis or a permanent basis, the Lawrence Station Road intersection with a signal. So that's addressed in our traffic study.
Carl, regarding the Lidl property at Lawrence Station Road, I'd like you to check your data on that. In my drive-by recently and seeing our tract from Quaker Bridge Road, I did see a for sale sign upon that property.
It may be, as I said, it was approved back in 2016, and the county advised us they haven't had any further action. They haven't got any formal design plans.
And meanwhile, Lidl has built elsewhere in Lawrenceville.
Correct. So that may be indeed dead. So that's an ongoing conversation with the county at that location.
Carl, about, I guess, I don't know, a couple months ago, I had requested a map which showed where cars go, where trucks go, where
Sure.
vans can go, color coded, something that everybody could understand. Is there something like that in the
Yes.
presentation? Thank you.
I don't know what our
So
next
we're
exhibit
up
is.
to exhibit A13, and this is peak hour truck auto distribution. I'll mark it A.
So far, we've discussed vehicles as if all vehicles are equal, and some pigs are different than other pigs. So we really need to break out where we're talking about trucks, where we're talking about regular passenger vehicles, and where, if any, we may be talking about any kind of delivery vehicles.
Certainly. Yeah, so the traffic study does discuss and break out the types of vehicles. A industrial development, warehouse distribution does generate both automobiles and large truck traffic. It is part of the logistics industry and certainly will be part of this project. So the traffic study does go into breaking that out. And the numbers I provided earlier with regard to the peak hour total traffic generation does incorporate the truck traffic, which is a component of the total traffic. And the traffic analysis, I should say, the modeling also reflects the impacts and characteristics of trucks in the analysis. So that's factored in to the analysis. So I want to reference Exhibit A13. With Exhibit A13, we tried to really just boil down for build out of the phase 1, phase 2 project, how that traffic that I described earlier, that 728 trips that come in the morning and that 721 trips that go out in the PM, how it distributes to the roadway system. It distributes in several cardinal directions. As I said, we basically have Clarksville Road to the north and south, which gets us up to Princeton-Hightstown Road. That brings us to points east or continues off into Plainsboro and South Brunswick. We have Quaker Bridge Road that brings us towards Hamilton and points east also. We have Route 1, obviously, which continues north up into South Brunswick, New Brunswick, and further north, Interchange 9 and so forth. We have Quaker Bridge Road itself and Province Line Road to the western end, which continues over into Princeton and Hopewell in areas to the west. And then we have Route 1 to the south, which obviously brings us down to the 295 corridor, down into Trenton, down into Philly. What's shown on this exhibit in blue is basically the AM volumes in blue distributed to each roadway network, and the PM volumes in a salmon color, I guess, for no better word, for the PM peak area.
And
then-
Carl, please define for all of us, please define
Sure.
again the actual times of AM and PM.
So it varies on any given day, but in this area, our morning peak hours generally occurring sometime around 7:30, 8:30, varies any given day. In the evening, 4:45 to 5:45, 4:30 to 5:30. That's when the road are seeing basically their peaking characteristics. And that varies a little bit any given day. It varies by intersection, but that's generally the time frame when traffic on the road systems on a weekday are generally seeing their highest periods, and that's what we use for analysis purposes. It's a 1 hour period, which we're designing for.
Hello? Okay. On your drawing there, you have a lot of gray. So am I to assume that that gray is a mixture of everything going together? Cars, trucks, vans, I don't know about bicycles. I
So
guess
let
it'd be
me
separate.
just
And also you have everything coming out on the road in every direction at this point.
correct. It shows the distribution to the very cardinal's direction. So
And is it all both two ways everywhere?
it shows by direction. So for instance, in the morning peak hour, heading toward the site southbound from the northern areas of West Windsor, from Princeton-Hightstown Road, coming down Clarksville Road, we anticipate about 114 automobiles and about 11 trucks. In the evening peak hour, heading southbound, coming from where we are today, the municipal complex, Clarksville Road, Princeton-Hightstown Road, Post Road North, collecting and coming down, we expect about 33 automobiles and 17 trucks over the course of an hour. In the opposite direction, in the morning peak hour, we would expect about 29 automobiles heading north up into West Windsor and 11 trucks. And in the evening peak hour, again, end of business day for the most part, where we see our highest egress of automobiles, there's about 109 automobiles heading north and about 16 trucks. And that's true for every direction. If you were to look at Quaker Bridge Road to the east in the morning, because it feeds into Hamilton, it feeds over to Sloan Avenue, we would expect about 174 automobiles arriving from that direction and 6 trucks, and about 50 in the evening coming from that direction and 9 trucks. And then again, the opposite, about 167 autos returning that way in the evening hour and 8 trucks. And then our highest truck percentages are really to the south. It's about 50% of our truck traffic. We would expect coming up in the morning about 53 autos coming up Route 1, 149 coming up Grover's Mill Road, because you can make the right from Route 1 onto Grover's Mill Road and come up to the site. That's a direct path. And about between the two paths coming from the south, 16 trucks coming up on Route 1 to the master plan road, 13 coming up Grover's Mill. Returning to the south in the evening, we would expect about 192 automobiles and 41 trucks. And again, in the morning, we would expect about 50 exiting automobiles and 27 trucks. And that's basically how the traffic distributes. And you can see quickly how that 700 to 800 vehicles dissipates to the road system relatively quickly, which starts to minimize and reduce the point load of traffic impacts of this project, which is advantageous actually of the location of this site and the access that we have to Quaker Bridge Road, to Clarksville Road, and to some extent to the Route 1 as that right turn in, right turn out provides.
Carl, excuse me. What is the basis for these numerical projections? Have you used published data, independent research, industry standards like from ITE? How
Correct.
did you develop these percentages?
These are straight from the traffic impact study. They're just summarized in a different manner. As I said, our traffic projections are based upon ITE standards. The distribution of where people coming to and from is based upon journey to work demographic data as to where people live around here that would come to and go to work at this location. And then the truck percentages are a little bit less scientific. It really is the positioning of this site in the market. We expect that some of the truck and tenants at this location will interact with the industrial that's in Cranberry along South River Road. There's certainly distribution centers there that will look for product from future tenants here. It also provides connectivity to Route 33 and to the shore points in Manalapan and Freehold. So that's the direct path in that direction. It's well positioned to the 295 corridor to feed into South Jersey and into Pennsylvania. So from a market standpoint, this site is filling an area where we would expect tenants to have some relationship into that market area. And then, of course, a little bit to the north on Route 1 and lesser extent to into the eastern area and into the Hamilton area. So it's basically done by demographic data. It's based on ITE projections. It is a reasonable estimate of what we can expect in terms of traffic at the completion of this project. Could there be some variation? Yes, there will be. Every project has some variation to it, but the general orders of magnitude, the general distributions are based upon the best available data and are reasonably representative of what we can expect of this project.
Now, those rush hours were picked based on car traffic. There's a lot more cars than there are trucks, so you took the total number and you said this is the rush hour for car, this is the rush hour, same thing for the afternoon rush hour. Whereas if you just did trucks, for instance, I would assume you might be getting something totally different. Would you expect trucks to be coming in and out the same way employees would be coming in and out?
No, as I said, the truck distributions are a little different than the employee distributions.
So it's
and that's-
possible that there are rush hours for trucks that have much higher absolute numbers for trucks than.
No,
the
in
2 hours
terms
you
of,
picked here.
in terms of the trucking distribution throughout the course of the day, the general magnitude that you're seeing here is probably what you'll see on an hourly basis, maybe a little higher at times, maybe a little lower at times, but throughout a 24-hour period, those are the general magnitudes that I would expect you'd see on an hourly basis. The trucking activity occurs throughout the day. There's not a 10 o'clock, all the trucks leave the warehouse. Their operations are basically fluid throughout the day. And, you know, you have a very good example of it. I mean, you all are familiar with Cranberry South River Road, probably drive that corridor as much as I do. And it's really a good example of what you see. If you drive it various times a day, you're going to see trucks, but you never see a line of trucks. You never see a peak of trucks. It's just continuous movement throughout the day. And
So what I'm saying is, were you expecting to see peaks of certain times for the total of cars and trucks? When it comes to the trucks, we're going to be seeing constant.
Andy, hold on 1 second. Let me just ask first question that will clarify. In the beginning of your presentation, you gave a statistics of how many cars come from Quaker Ridge Road, Nassau Park, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have a statistics for trucks? How many trucks go to Quaker Ridge in a day, Nassau Park, Lawrenceville Mall, and Costco?
I didn't break out trucks for those facilities, but certainly they're not heavy trucking facilities. They all take trucks. A supermarket, for instance, in Mercer Mall, ShopRite statistically usually gets about 25 trucks a day. That's typical for a ShopRite. Costco, I think the statistics is something more like 3 or 4 trucks a day is the way their operation goes, if I recall my statistics correctly. Wegmans is along the line of ShopRite. They would be getting that 20 to 25 types.
What about
trucks.
the whole Nassau Park Mall?
I haven't broken that out in terms of the trucks, but overall, it's certainly not of the magnitude of a logistics center. But, you know, there are trucks going in and out of Quaker Bridge Mall, Mercer Mall, and Nassau Park every given day. They're on the road system. You either see them or you don't. But I am not going to attempt to compare a logistics facility to a retail facility.
Okay, Clarksville Road. Thankfully, most of those trucks don't go on Clarksville Road. If I read your report, and yeah, I did read it a number of times, correctly, the estimate for Clarksville Road was based on, well, some of the trucks are going north to some point, and I would like to see where eventually all these trucks wind up to get an idea of where the numbers came from. But so now you're saying something like half of those trucks are going to go north on Clarksville, half are going to take Quaker Bridge, and I'm not sure how that's taken because you don't know and I don't know what other traffic situations might force more trucks to go one way or more trucks to go another way. So it sounds like it was kind of split. And then out of that, you said out of 20% of whatever those trucks were are now going to go on Clarksville Road. And so now we got a situation where you took a half and then you multiplied and you took these numbers, you divided them by half, and then I believe you multiplied them by 25%, by 20%. And then you said 20% of these are going to go on Clarksville Road. So if I take any column here, and I did a little sensitivity analysis here, if I take any column here, I can figure out what's going on Clarksville Road, and just looking at your numbers, which I consider fairly optimistic, that's telling me during phase 2, for instance, there's going to be a peak of 27 trucks going in, trucks coming down Clarksville Road, and then on and out is 24, and then
Which direction, Andrea?
coming into the place is going to be 27, coming out is going to be 24. Basically, just taking just taking your numbers here, going down to phase 2, taking say I guess worst possible case numbers are PM peak hour for trucks, which is say 70, which is going to be 40 and 37, which is 77 trucks. So now we're getting situations where we're going to be getting something like 30, 40, whatever trucks an hour going past Clarksville Road. Does that mean?
Well,
Andrea,
Yeah.
excuse me, you're saying Clarksville Road, but Clarksville Road goes north and south. Can you delineate to which direction you're
If I'm on the, between the two of them, I mean, that it doesn't really, if I'm sitting on Clarksville Road, it probably doesn't matter to me much whether the truck's coming north or south.
So combined in the morning peak hour, two directional traffic, it's 22 trucks that are heading, that would be northbound, southbound on Clarksville Road. In other words, if you were to sit out here during the morning hour, you would count 22 trucks passing the municipal building in the morning. In the evening, it would be on the order of 33 trucks over the course of an hour.
Right.
Two directions.
167 trucks was the max you had on here, but as I said, I don't know if that's necessarily the max because we haven't really established that that's the rush hour necessarily for trucks, but.
Yeah, so you'll see throughout the course of the
but,
day,
okay, so
that
that's
general
30
magnitude varying.
Right, and so I'm looking at this saying, well, I don't know if I believe the 50%. I don't know who's coming in. I don't know where the trucks are going because I don't know who the customer is. So I don't know where they might have their other warehouses or their ports or whatever they're bringing or taking their trucks from. And if I brought that up to 40%, I'm just throwing that out as an outlier since I think we're being a little optimistic with these numbers here. That gets me 66 trucks an hour, and that's telling me that a truck every minute could be going past Maurice Hawk Elementary School. I would want to look at some way that that's not going to happen, because I don't consider that an acceptable pathway
So
for these trucks.
I understand that. So there's two things. I think the distributions we got are reasonable, indicative of what we can expect. They're probably on the high side, in my opinion, based upon the types of warehouses that were here and the types of generation. The trucks that want to go north on Clarksville, their orientation, their direct path to another terminal, which would be either the industrial areas in Cranberry or retail areas and other industrial areas located on Route 33, further to the east, Shore Points, Manalapan. That would be the direct path, which is why they would utilize Clarksville Road to Princeton-Hightstown Road. Princeton-Hightstown Road is a New Jersey truck access road designated. Clarksville Road is a non-excluded access road. So the way
Carl,
yes,
as you mentioned, both the Princeton-Hightstown Road and Clarksville Road, follow me a minute. Let's talk about that intersection of the Princeton-Hightstown Road and Clarksville Road. Can you tell me how the big trucks that might come from this warehouse can navigate that intersection with left turn onto Clarksville Road from the Princeton-Hightstown Road going towards this warehouse development, and also, right turns going away, right turn at the intersection of the high school there going down the Princeton-Hightstown Road to, like you say, to 133 to Turnpike. Is the Princeton-Hightstown Road and the Clarksville Road intersection really designed to be able to take the truck turning radiuses of these big trucks?
The intersections today, you have a 4-lane road on Princeton-Hightstown Road. So at those locations, you would have probably some wide swings by trucks to make that. As you're aware, that intersection is actually being reconstructed by the county, associated with the soon to be constructed improvements along through our downtown area from Clarksville, which includes this intersection over to Cranberry Road. But yeah, you'll trucks sometimes override lines, and that happens at every intersection. The trucks are not
that particular line
issue.
is at our high
Andrea, let
school.
the witness finish his statement, please.
I understand the concern, and I would love to stand here and tell you that, and my client would love me to tell you that no trucks are going to use Clarksville Road. The problem is Clarksville Road is a 600 series county route. It is not a designated truck access route, but it is not an excluded truck access route. So the way the rules work is when you have a terminal, a trucker is permitted to use the quickest route to the New Jersey access route, to the National Highway access route. To go to Cranberry, to go to the points east on Route 33, the quickest path is Clarksville Road to Hightstown Road. I can't change that condition. A trucker is not required to backtrack, to go down Route 1 to 295 to the Turnpike to go north on 33. That's specifically excluded in the Title 16. So the fact of the matter is, it's a 600 series road. It is a county road. Right now, there is a truck weight restriction just north of the Meadow Road Bridge. It's an 18-ton restriction, and we had considered that initially, but the county made a specific point to advise me that with reconstruction of the bridge over Amtrak, which will be done in the next several years by the DOT, they are going to rebuild that culvert, and that one restriction that's holding back trucks on that road will be removed. And the county advised me of that when I was preparing the traffic study, and we're explicit to make sure that I considered that in the traffic study. So the fact of the matter is, we do expect some trucks to travel Clarksville Road. They're permitted to, and Princeton-Hightstown Road, and their orientation would be any orientations that are directly along that route. If you're heading to point south, if you're heading out the 195 corridor, the direct and required route by the truckers are down to the 295 corridor, down to 195. If you're heading up to North Brunswick, Route 1 corridor, even the Port Authority Quite frankly, it's a little faster to go up Route 1 to interchange 9 from this particular site than it is to go through to interchange 8A. And we've run those travel analysis that you can do that now with the Google during various times of the day with traffic loads and conditions. So that traffic would head that way. So we think it's a reasonable estimate. I may actually be overestimating the number of trucks going that way because it assumes, but one of the things that I needed to recognize is that you do have facilities such as Amazon that is talking to a lot of these tenants and taking in products before they go out on their sort and delivery routes. So there will be some, there'll be some interaction over the Cranberry.
I have a question.
Hang on a second. Can we interrupt what you're discussing so a couple of folks can ask questions?
Sure.
Andrea, please. I thought you wanted to ask something, and I asked you to hold on while you finish the statement.
I think he knows what I'm saying.
In last week's testimony, I understand this, the new private road, which is a public road also, connection to the Route 1 is a DOT is going to approve and will take time that connection will be built. And
Correct.
it may
So-
not be built by all the warehouse will be constructed and the connection may not be built.
Yeah, so what we discussed at the last meeting, while we didn't address all the scenarios, as I said, this project's going to build out over time and buildings are going to come along over time. Our intention is to build as soon as we have permitting and approvals, the roadway infrastructure that is shown. It isn't to say that all that infrastructure is needed day one for the first building that comes online. And what we've indicated is that we know actually that the Clarksville Road and Quaker Bridge Road and the Quaker Bridge Road interchange can handle actually full build out of phase 1 and phase 2 without the connection to Route 1. In fact, that connection, as I said, becomes more important when you add the traffic loads associated with the office and hotel fronting on Route 1. That being said, our intent is as soon as we get DOT approval, we would build it. So if for some reason the process goes quick and we get a permit in 6 months, we'll build it. If it's 2 years, we'll build it. The concern is we can't be held up from starting any building subject to an agency that has no time clock.
No, I understand, but if the connection is not built and the warehouse is built, do you have any study that this number that was 77 cars, 15?
Yeah, so
Where they will go?
yeah, so I provided some information to your traffic consultant. Basically what happens is it's very simple. The traffic would come down and use the Quaker Bridge Road interchange to go north. It's a simple right and up and then continue on. So it's the same numbers. It's just they're getting there via Quaker Bridge Road and Clarksville Road. And what we did is we tested those intersections and driveway to make sure that they would continue to operate, and they do that. Inbound, quite frankly, the inbound is probably the least intensive use by the warehouse because the quickest paths into the warehouse is both by the direct connection onto Quaker Bridge Road and the lefts into the site and by Grover's Mill Road. So that's actually the longest path if a truck coming from the south. But we would expect that traffic is simply accommodated on Quaker Bridge Road. And the numbers have been provided to your consultant to verify that, but we have checked that.
So none will spill over on the Crossville Road, is that you think?
That's correct. They would come down and use Quaker Bridge Road and use the slip ramp onto US Route 1 North instead of the direct right out.
So you'd be willing to prevent them from using Clarksville Road?
You can't prevent them from using Clarksville Road, but there would no reason to. They would still want to go north on Route 1. If you go north on Clarksville, your route back to Route 1 is circuitous. First of all, on Meadow Road, Fran has advised me there is a truck restriction on Meadow Road, so the trucks can't use Meadow Road. So your next opportunity would be the New Jersey Highway Network, which would be Princeton-Hightstown Road, and then over to Route 1. And that route is so circuitous and long, it's not attractive. And it's direct and the trucker going down to Quaker Bridge and just getting onto Route 1 North. So it's really a very simple reassignment of traffic that occurs under that scenario.
When this project was first discussed, the big advantage was that it was on the outside of town, near major roads like Quaker Bridge, where there are no residences, roads like Route 1, which is I think anybody will agree, an industrial road, that those were ways to get onto roads like 195, 295, and that was the way that the traffic would go. We're now seeing a situation where somehow or other, a truck that's on right near all of these big roads is going to be allowed to just make a left turn or right turn and come right through, go down Clarksville Road, go past two schools, go past residences, go past two sets of apartment buildings, where where people are going to hear their vibrations. And I would like to see a way that we can prevent most of that. We're not talking about the cars so much. We know there's going to be a bunch of cars and they're going to go where they want to go, and no matter whether they're here or they're somewhere else. But when you're talking, one truck could be like, I don't know how many cars. If you've sat behind a truck, I'm sure when it's been making a turn, or you've had a truck go past someplace when you've been in there, and it's a totally different thing than having cars go past. And I saw your phase 3, and your phase 3 had more cars than I think it had for all these warehouses, because it is commercial, right? Retail and basically similar to mall type traffic. But when it comes to the trucks, I think we have a whole different situation. And if there was a way to limit trucks coming out of your turns, out of your driveways, of which you've got 6 driveways on Clarksville Road, from turning into town, then I'd like to explore that. It would seem to me you could do something like not put a right, say if it's on the, I'm using west and east different than you, if it's on the side away from Route 1, having a truck make a right turn on that northernmost, having the ability for a truck, for instance, to make a right turn on that northernmost intersection is just like inviting the truck to do that. It gets away from all of that intersection. It gets away from people doing lefts. It's right there. They're just going to do it. Why not have that intersection set up so that it's right turn for cars? That's most of your traffic, as you've specified, and let the trucks not make a right turn there, let them not make right turns out of that side. Let them come left and come around Quaker Bridge. Same thing on the other side. Let's eliminate those left turns, and at least on the way in, and explore ways to do that for trucks coming out. And we could, if you take our Title 39, we could enforce that using our own police also.
So let me touch on it. And I understand the sentiment. Obviously, I know this town very well, and I drive this road every day, and I do understand the sentiment. The issue from an engineering and this planning board standpoint is that these roadways are legally accessible by trucks. There is a desire line for trucks to go that direction. It is incumbent upon us to make sure that we provide for proper and safe geometry for the accommodation of these vehicles. It is a large site. There is, and I've looked at it, really no safe way to try to start physically prohibiting trucks from turns. For instance, if you somehow restricted trucks from coming out of B1, they simply come down to the signal and go north. If you tried to restrict them at the signal, which you really can't because the signal has to be properly designed with all proper geometry, they simply would come down to Quaker Bridge Road, make the right, and make the right. There's really no way either on the east side or the west side to prohibit those movements. And if you start to select particular driveways and try to create physical restrictions, you create the problem of unintended consequences. In other words, you'll have trucks that start to do maneuvers that are unsafe. You'll have trucks that end up overturning or running over the curb. And you see it every day in places where things aren't properly designed. So we do need to make sure that we recognize that that's a travel pattern. Whether we like it or not, we have to recognize that. And we need to make sure that we've safely accommodated those movements. The other alternative that's out there is truck restrictions, Title 39. Private driveways, you could potentially put restricted signs, no trucks make a right and stuff like that. That has to be something that is an ordinance adopted by council. But since this is a county road, the county would also have to agree to that, and you would have to have concurring freeholder concurrence on that. That's the only way to be able to enact that as a regulatory device. That is something that council would have to talk to the freeholders on with regard to that type of restriction. However, I would note that there's still no way to stop any of the trucks that come out of this side if we put trucks no right, trucks no right, trucks no right from coming down onto Quaker Bridge Road and making the right. So at the end of the day, even with particular signage on truck restrictions, there's still a route that the trucks will use to go the way that their GPS and or their next terminal is showing them. And again, you got to be careful of that unintended consequence of loading trucks where we haven't designed for them or where we really don't want to put more trucks. So it's something I've grappled with. I knew it was going to be a concern of this board. I'd love to be able to tell you something different. Believe me, my client would love me to tell you something different, but I can't do that. The road is a county road. It's not a restricted truck route. We need to design to accommodate that. The only other option, that again, it's not a developer option, is for the township council to work with the county to establish truck routes through the town. There's a process for that. It's done through your master plan process. Again, it's not a development application process. And that's a separate process that the township could consider.
I mean, I can't stop.
Like the signs.
Point is that I'm sensing, and many board members have not spoken, but I would say categorically, we do not want the trucks from this project going northbound on Clarksville Road and passing an elementary school and a high school and many private residences. Please, folks, please, let's have some decorum. You've talked about ordinance by the council. I've discussed this matter with our attorney, and I think it's appropriate at this point to ask Mr. Mueller to weigh in and offer his professional opinion with regard to prohibiting the movement of trucks from this development onto northbound Clarksville Road.
Yeah, obviously, the planning board has jurisdiction over the access points with respect to the site plan. And there is case law that says, as a condition of approval, a board can impose a condition which basically establishes the direction in which a truck would go from leaving the site. So I think the board does have the power to impose such a condition, which would basically limit or prohibit movements by trucks onto Clarksville going north. Carl makes a point about that the county has jurisdiction. If probably the best course of action would be for an ordinance to be adopted if we don't want to adopt a condition. But I think a condition that the board has the power to adopt a condition and then go to the county. That's the option that Carl laid out.
And under that scenario, the applicant would have no issue or no objection to incorporating our design signage, the restricted signage, the Title 39 signage. We can work with Jeff on that signage. If the town wants to adopt that and you can get a concurring resolution from the county, we're certainly willing to put those restrictions in place. So, we're sensitive to the concerns of the town, but we can't condition ourselves on that actually occurring, because if for some reason the county won't offer a concurring resolution, then we're caught between two jurisdictions.
But if you agree to those conditions and request the towns for Title 39, can't the township police enforce that turn out of your property? Because
my understanding, Mr. Mueller could weigh in, but my understanding in exploring this matter in the past is with the county being the jurisdictional agency over the county, you also need a concurring resolution of such an ordinance by the freeholders. We just did something similar to this on Quaker Bridge Road in Hamilton, where the county actually wanted to do a truck restriction on a particular turn movement. And we had to go to the township first to get township council to adopt a resolution with the movement they wanted restricted. And then the county adopted a concurring resolution. So it requires actions from both governmental agencies. So we can concur, we can agree to the regulatory signage and restrictions and the creation of the signs and installation of the signs. But we can't, and the town council certainly can act and draft an ordinance, but we can't assure you or concur that that'll be an enforceable condition at the end of the day if the county, for some reason, and I don't know if they will or not, would not concur with that.
But
But
if
this
the
restriction,
county,
if you go.
Excuse me, Ennis,
Hold on,
let
hold
the
on
mayor
one second.
finish, please.
but if the county agrees to that, you agree not to oppose that at the county
That's
level or the
correct.
township
We
level?
have no, if the county concurred with it, I just, when we started this project, we talked to the county. The county was clear to me that they had no intent of that type of restriction. And they told me that 18-ton restriction is being lifted. So they wanted to make sure when I prepared my traffic study, I was evaluating what that meant. And that's what we've done. And that's what I was asked to present to you this evening. And that's what I've done. As I said, the owner has no need to have that route occur, because if that becomes a restriction, then the trucker's obligation is to follow the next most direct path to the terminal. So we can agree to the signage as a condition of approval, and the Title 39 enforcement certainly we agree to, but it would be up to the council and the freeholder or committee men, we call them now, right? To adopt the resolution. Commissioners.
And
Andrea, one second. Now, you just a few minutes ago, you said that if you don't have the connection to Route 1, you can still operate, but just by the statement that the trucker can take the direct route to the next terminal, not having that connection makes a whole lot of difference, because your direct route to the terminal changes a lot.
Not really. I mean, the truck component of the traffic flow, less than 20 vehicles an hour coming down and making that right. The trucks are clearly, they're big, they're concerning to people, but in terms of the percentage component and the particular operational traffic impact, they're not the big component of the traffic flow. So certainly if that restriction occurred, they'd basically come down and use the Quaker Bridge Road interchange until such time as we get that connection completed. Regardless, the east side is going to use the Avalon Way connection and come across Quaker Bridge Road. Some will come across ultimately to the Spine Road, but the volumes that we're looking at and evaluating just won't change the needle in terms of operations.
As a common sense measure, if you can live, if you are claiming that you can live without a connection to Route 1, then it's a lot easier to live without a connection to Clarksville Road, because
Well,
that's a much smaller connection than to Route 1.
No, actually, it's just the opposite. This is the more
No,
important.
that the other side. I mean, I don't care if you get out of the warehouse and go to Quaker Ridge Road. It's the traffic in front of the schools and the residences on the other side.
Yeah, no, these connections and the Spine Road connection is an integral part, because you need to get to both Clarksville Road, to the main intersection that we're reconstructing at Clarksville Quaker Bridge, as well as Avalon. Avalon won't handle all of the traffic, particularly when you bring into line the future commercial development.
I don't think anybody has objection to that. Everybody, from what I've heard, the objection is going the other way around towards Meadow Road and past Meadow Road.
Correct. So what you would do as a condition is we would craft a no tractor trailer making a right at the signal out of B1, out of C1, and no tractor trailers making a left out of the signal. And that would be the regulatory signage we would be creating. We would agree to that as a condition of approval, subject to the proper ordinances being adopted by the jurisdictional agencies.
But this same jurisdiction should be applied to traffic coming south also. Because you're talking only north right now on the Clarksville Road.
So that's
same condition should be on to
Right.
coming south on that. road.
So you are dealing with only half the traffic, because there's no way to stop a trucker that's plugged in his GPS and is brought along Princeton-Hightstown Road. So that's what I was saying before. You can't start restricting geometry, because the truck still needs to be received. That's going to come down Clarksville Road. So the restrictions that we can do can control the outbound, but we cannot control the inbound.
Well, I think that as a part of what Mr. Mueller referenced as our authority over the intersections, we can also put no right turn signage. And after a few situations where our local police enforce Title 39 and word gets around, I think that would also preclude the drivers wanting to come through the area with which we're most concerned.
I really
Need
don't
to be
think,
seen.
I don't think you can do that because that's on the public road and that has an unintended consequence I was talking about. If a trucker comes down and if he decides not to disobey the movement, then he's trying to figure out how to turn around and get in, whether he's going into the mall, Costco, or coming down onto Quaker Bridge. That's where you starting to get into creating unsafe conditions. I've never seen a left, a right-in movement restricted on a path that a truck can come from. So I really, and I've struggled with this on multiple projects. There's really no way to control the inbound traffic.
If we didn't let any trucks in on that side, right in, they would have to come around to Quaker Bridge and then go around to Master Plan Road. And if there was no entrance, I would assume the GPS would show them that after that, or they would learn it pretty quickly.
Well, there's no way you could stop. You need to have rights in. We need to get cars in. You need to get cars in at the
Well,
signal.
yeah, but there's a width that you could put for a road for cars, and there's a width.
This
that you can put
is where
for
you get into engineering safety issues. We cannot design a traffic signal, design geometry that creates a safe condition. My partner, myself, unsafe condition. We're not going to design plans that are forcing something that can create a safety issue. That's just, and that's, you know, part of what this board and your professionals need to do is make sure what we're designing is safe. So the fact of the matter is I've struggled with this in many logistics development projects. And it always turns out there's ways to control the outbound traffic depending upon the project. But the inbound traffic, you can't control where they're coming from. It's not the same trucker. He's not going to learn a lesson. There's a different guy coming every day, different providers. Some of the users will have their own, you know, we'll have common carriers every day, but some of them will be, you know, a national carrier and the guy's coming here for the first time. He's going to come down and you got to make sure that we get him off the road safely and we get him into the site safely. Otherwise, we're going to have some strange stuff going on here.
So if you put a sign, no trucks this entrance, I see those all over the place.
But they just got to find the next entrance.
Well, if the next entrance is, you know, you put a assigned truck route.
That you have signs at these driveways doesn't stop the guy that's originating at a terminal in Cranberry that's driving over on Princeton-Hightstown Road. He doesn't get that notification until he's at that driveway. And then you've created the situation. Now, what do? He either overruns the curb or whatever and comes in if we haven't provided safe geometry, or he figures out how to turn around and get in. And that's where we start to create traffic problems.
I'd like to suggest that this discussion has been very informative, provocative, but at the same time, our professionals have an opportunity to offer their viewpoints. And perhaps we could move on from this northbound movement and southbound movement on Clarksville Road, pending further discussion at the point where we have our professionals offer their viewpoints. Would that be okay with the board?
Jean, she has a
Can I just
question.
ask one question? Is there,
Yeah, I'm listening.
Carl, is there any anticipation if they were restricted from you being Princeton-Hightstown Road in Clarksville, that they'd come down 130 and take Village Road West and Village Road East all the way out there to the intersection there with Lawrence Square Village and make a right and go in? Would they use?
I
that
don't
road
think
instead of
Village
Clarksville?
Road, well, yeah, I don't think Village Road provides a direct enough route that would fall under.
It has the same issues. There's
Well,
two
but
schools and on,
Yeah, but it's
Right,
also,
that's
it's also a different road. It's not a direct route. It doesn't have as direct a connection to Princeton-Hightstown Road, which is on the New Jersey Access Highway System. So I don't expect that would happen. If you prohibited trucks somehow on,
We can, we
I
can
don't know,
prohibit
that-
on Village
I don't,
Road.
I don't
yeah.
expect that that would be
Well,
an
it
issue.
has
No,
access
it's not.
from 130.
Yeah, but there's
right
other,
straight
there's,
through.
but where it accesses 130, there's really not a lot of origination or destinations. Your destinations are 295 corridor, 33. So it's sort of a roundabout way to make that connection. So yeah,
We're getting some trucks on there now.
I mean, currently,
they have a destination either in the neighborhood or
I
in the
mean,
immediate
all-
area.
all
Um,
Walmart trucks in East Windsor go on Village Road now.
Yeah.
All
can we-
trucks going to
There's truck
Walmart and
traffic.
East
Right.
Windsor.
There's
Mm.
truck traffic there all the time.
Can we, Mark, I assume we can make it no truck traffic road?
Andrea, I strongly feel we should
Mm.
postpone further discussion on this until we hear from our professionals.
Mhm.
If Mr. Pankey has other testimony on other items, I think we'll entertain that.
Gene, just, okay, go ahead.
Can I just ask a quick question? Thanks. This AM PM is very nice, but I don't know if how effectively it applies for this type of development. I'd be more interested in, it. Maybe you have it somewhere in this huge book here. I didn't see it. Hour by hour truck traffic. I wouldn't mind seeing if it was like a pre-COVID projections for truck traffic between the hours, let's say 10 and 5, and then maybe after PM peak. Post-COVID projections, just so, because trucks come and they want to get in and out as fast as possible. They want to do their drops to, drop their trailer, leave, and then come back later, pick it up and pick up the empty. It'd be more interesting to see hour by hour after AM and PM peaks rather than the AM PM trucks. That's number one point. This for E1, right? There's no left turn onto Quaker Bridge Road anywhere that, right?
That's correct. There's that.
And like even if they now trucks coming down Route 1 and they make that left turn onto Quaker Bridge, there's no way for them. Can they make a left on Clarksville there?
Yes, the Clarksville Road signal, which we're rebuilding and widening and improving the left turn.
What's it called? Acceleration lane or whatever, the lane for the left turn there?
There'll be
Yeah.
two left turn lanes.
There'll be
per
two
witness's
left turn
testimony.
lanes.
And will they be
they'll-
longer?
And they'll be longer.
Okay, because right now the one lane there
It's
is not
terrible.
long enough for cars.
It's terrible. Yeah.
So that's got to change. Okay.
Yes, that's correct. And that's part of our plans
Okay.
and proposal to the county. Yes.
Um,
So hour by hour, there's nothing pre-COVID. There's no information hour by hour of existing trucks on the roadway. There's nothing in the data for that. Hour by hour projection for the site is difficult. The data doesn't really break down that way because we are more focused on the peaking characteristics and the peak hour characteristics. But in general, your hour by hour truck traffic is going to ebb and flow around these volumes, those 17 to 20, 25 vehicles per hour
I'm not sure about
throughout the
that.
day.
I'm suspect on that. Do you have any comparisons to other warehouse developments such as the ones in Monroe, hour by hour, how many trucks go in and out of those? You can't compare it to Costco, you can't compare it to Wegmans, you can't compare it to ShopRite because there's a different use.
Right.
I'd be more interested in like Monroe has a lot of warehouses. Other warehouse developments. There's a Prologis development on Route on 130 over there. I mean, maybe something like that. Do you have any projections?
So a
or
lot of those
comparisons?
facilities we've counted, and it's actually the data for those facilities, which we've counted actually is in the ITE data that's used to make this projection. Several of those warehouse, but most of that data is always focused on the peak period, the peak hour, because that's the data we need as traffic engineers. There's not a lot of daily generation, but we'll look. Let's see what we can find.
I would like to see hour by hour after peak because I think that's when most trucks will be traveling.
It occurs throughout the day. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
You'll
Thank
see activity 24 hours a day on a warehouse. facility.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Carl? Mayor?
One question. You mentioned the 18-ton restriction on Clarksville Road?
Yeah, so
You-
today, as you're aware, there's an 18-ton restriction on that culvert north of Amtrak.
So most trucks are more than 18, right? 40 ton.
Correct. But what I was telling you is when we interacted with the county specifically informed me associated with the replacement of the Amtrak bridge, which is going to occur in certain next couple of years, they're going to either incorporate in that project or themselves, they're going to replace that culvert and eliminate the restriction. And the
So-
county made me aware of that.
But so until that restriction is eliminated, those trucks can't go that way.
That's correct, but that, my understanding is that's going to happen in the next couple of years. So it's probably going to be coincident with our first or second building. It's not a long-term project. The replacement of the Amtrak bridge, the way it's been described to me, is imminent because of the status of that bridge.
Okay, but you do agree that until that's replaced, the trucks can't go that way?
Correct. 18-ton restriction would prevent it. Yes,
18 ton is most, if you have a trailer, you have 18 ton.
correct.
Simon?
Carl, could you discuss the level of service at Clarksville and Quaker Bridge today with the one lane and what the changes you're going to do with 2 lanes there and what that's going to do to the level of service? And if you're going to have trucks in those 2 lanes, is that going to deteriorate the level of service at all?
So certainly that intersection today, again, for the public, level of service, after we go through all of this modeling, delay calculations, and equations, as traffic engineer, we try to boil this down as simple as possible. And we bring it down to what's called a level of service. And a level of service is similar to a grade school report card. Level of service A to F. A, obviously, midnight, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning conditions. You can drive without conditions, without issues. E and F levels of service are basically roadways are operating at or generally over capacity. And that doesn't mean things are locked up. We're facing levels of service F and E all the time in the state of New Jersey. But what it means is if you arrive at a traffic signal, you may wait a cycle to get through and you may be queued back a little bit, but then you get through. So this intersection today, the intersection of Clarksville and Quaker Bridge, is operating at overall levels of service E during the peak hours. The left turn onto Clarksville is experiencing some F levels of service during peak hours. When we're done with the widening and reconfiguration of that intersection and reconstruction of that signal, we'll be bringing that operation up to levels of service C and D. We'll be eliminating that F level of service on the left end. The design of the intersection will incorporate proper geometric design, as I was talking about before, to accommodate the tracking of truck traffic through the intersection side by side, and we'll have the proper radius and so forth. So that's part of the design function. We'll be designing for the types of vehicles that will be traveling through this intersection. So at the end of the day, that intersection operates much better than it is today. So we're improving the conditions at that location.
Even with the addition of the trucks for this warehouse project?
Even with the future full build out of the retail, office, and hotel.
Did you do a study on the level of service at, say, Princeton-Hightstown Road, Clarksville, and what the impact of the trucks at that intersection would be?
It's not documented in this traffic study, and I don't have it with me this evening, but we did provide some information to the county. I forget what our findings were at that location. There was some degradations there, but we actually didn't factor in the improvements that the county's imminently building up there. But I don't have that information here this evening. We did give it to the county at their request.
What else do you have?
So I guess we really went through the traffic study. I just briefly want to touch on the site circulation. My partner, Brian, really did a good job, I think, describing how the site works, the access from the Spine Road, the separation of auto parking from the functional aspects of the warehouse. All of that's very standard and typical, as Mr. Porsick also testified to. The only thing I just wanted to put a little bit more information before the board is with regard to parking. So as you're aware, you've established a parking requirement in terms of the number of spaces. which for this project, we would require under your ordinance 1,714 spaces. We're proposing to construct 2,001 spaces and then to bank another 200 spaces. As Mr. Porsick had indicated, it's important to make sure that we have the right number of spaces on this site to accommodate the types of tenants that would come to this site. I just wanted a little information to the board. Your ordinance and the number of parking spaces is a little bit on the lower end of what generally is done, as Mr. Porsick has testified to. And the one reference I would give to the board, just to give a sense to support our proposal to bank some spaces so that we had a little bit of flexibility based on tenants, is that we do have data that's published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers in the Public Patient Parking Generation, which is in its 5th edition. And based on data within that publication, we would find that the number of spaces at peak would be about 2,170 before this site, which is close to the 2,200 that we proposed. However, we're banking 200 of those. So I would respectfully suggest to the board that the request for the bank spaces and the minor exceedance of your ordinance is appropriate. It provides for the ability to make sure we have a safe environment for the various tenants that might come to the site, and also to make a successful project for both the township and the applicant. And certainly what the request that has been made by Mr. Porsick in his testimony is supported by research data in the industry. Mr. Lamoureux could double check those numbers for you if the board so desires.
Carl, are the number of spaces which will enable charging of electric vehicles at least meeting the state requirement?
I'm going to defer. My partner says yes.
Yes.
And are the number of spaces for handicap drivers
Yes.
adequate? Thank you.
And I think that summarizes, Chris, I don't think I missed anything, right?
I think you covered it.
Bob, good.
We'll be here next week, I hope. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. For our next witness, I'd like to call up our architect.
Before you do that, we're going to allow our stenographer to stretch. It is 8:45 by the clock on the wall. We'll take a 5-minute recess, please. Yes, I think they have 7:14. If you want to go over here and look at it more closely, please feel free to do so. Good question, Mike. Good question. This is going to be very close, very strong about control. You got your Work cut out for you, sir. What? I think the board is pretty adamant about this. And I understand in the TRC meetings, this issue was identified. The certificates of- Say that again? Oh, yeah, yeah, as the white, as the. Okay. Good. I'm sorry?
That's my understanding.
You're welcome. Kind of think of you as having the toughest job here tonight, keeping up with all the comments. Okay, wait for you. Well, 2 more dates have been reserved. If we get through their witnesses by 10 o'clock, I should start this one in our promotion. But we do have 2 more dates, 2 consecutive days. Architect.
Sure, yeah, but we need stuff to pass with the gas station. There, that hasn't been followed, so I don't know. That's right.
Folks, can you begin to find your way back to your seats? How are you, friend? Hanging in there. Folks, can you please find your seats? No, everyone is. Fran?
Hi.
No, I don't use the gavel. Against my principles. Thank you very much. Oh, Mike. All right. Mr. Mueller, please. Where's the mayor? I'm sure he didn't get bored. All right. Since this meeting is being videotaped and people will have access to it, in the interest of time, I'd like to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next witness is our architect, Michael Baumstark. He's from Cornerstone Architects. I believe he was sworn in at the first meeting. You're still under oath, but we would like to get him qualified. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah,
You spell your last name
yeah, Mike Baumstark.
Promstank.
B-A-U-M-S.
I'm sorry?
B-A-U-M.
B-A-U-M.
I'm a principal at Cornerstone Architects, licensed in New Jersey and have testified amongst a lot of towns in New Jersey on very similar matters.
And you're
And
licensed?
you're licensed as a registered architect?
Yes, in New
Are
Jersey.
your credentials current?
Current.
And roughly how many agencies have you appeared before in New Jersey?
Probably 20, 25 right now.
Is the board okay with this witness being considered expert? So be it. Proceed, Chris.
Okay, can you take us through?
Yeah, the
let's-
fir-
is this
first
the
exhibit is basically a 2D of facility B1 colored picture.
And I'm gonna mark this. We are up to A14. You said this is facility A1?
B1.
Oh, B1. Okay, so it's listed 16. Okay, so we're marking this as A14. And it's proposed elevation facility B1.
Correct. And this is just an example of buildings that'll be done in the park. So each of these buildings will be designed for high institutional grade quality and appearance. And why we're doing that and why it is done that way is so we can attract high quality tenants. These tenants will
Can you
tend to
speak a
stay
little louder,
longer,
please?
have longer leases in the building.
Mr. Baumstock, you need to hold the microphone close to your mouth. You have a very soft
Okay.
voice by comparison with Mr. Pankey.
Okay. So each of these buildings will be designed for high institutional grade quality and appearance. That'll have high quality tenants come here and then have longer leases. So these tenants will stay here for long periods of time. So these buildings won't go vacant. Each of the buildings to the park will be LEED certified. And again, that'll bring nice, high quality tenants. They'll want, because they're energy efficient. They want to be in buildings that will be.
I'm not sure this is
Design
being picked up. Cindy, is this being picked up? Cindy here?
He's wondering if it's being picked up. Is it working?
The building spaces are predominantly warehouse distribution with some light office in it. I'm going to pull up another exhibit. This is the material board for the buildings. So each of the buildings are designed with precast insulation.
Wait, okay, I'm sorry. I thought A14
So,
is what?
yes, so if you look at the list that we provided, it's number 16. And we're marking page 16 as A14 because we didn't mark in material board or the proposed elevation for facility. So number 16 on our list is A14.
I have it, looks like a sheet, A202, is that the one we're talking about? Yeah, I want to confirm the number on the bottom.
It's just material board. There's no number on it.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you're asking about this next one. I'm sorry. I was thinking we were talking about the last. So this
No,
one.
I was talking about both.
Okay, so this one is sheet or number 14 on the list, and it's material board. And we're gonna mark this as A15.
Yep, okay.
The pictures are out of order in my book. I don't know about other books.
Yeah, they're all.
It's a couple, it's a couple past. A15 is a couple past A14, so
We'll figure it
just
out.
reorder it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, in my book also, they are out of order.
Okay, it should be page 14 on your books, but maybe some of them got out of order for some reason.
We figured it out, no problem.
Okay, so the buildings will be constructed of insulated concrete precast panels. That'll be the main walls of the facility. They'll have vertical reveals and horizontal reveals, and then there'll be bump out features throughout on all four sides. The color scheme will be a gray scheme with a blue accent. We're using three types of gray for this, a light, a medium, and a dark, just to kind of break up the image and so forth. There'll be glass corner features. And that's where the office will be. At these office features, we're going to put in a metal canopy. And again, that'll match one of the colors on the building. The top of the building will have a metal coping, again, which will match one of the colors of gray. Throughout the facility on all four sides, we're putting clear story windows in, and that'll bring in natural light throughout the facility. The main building will be concrete floor, structural steel, metal decking, insulation to code, and then we're putting a white TPO roof on top to reflect any heat and so forth. These buildings will be
excuse me.
designed.
Solar ready? You gonna? Is
Yes.
the?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to talk about. So these buildings are designed to hold solar panels. Legislation requires 40% of the roof. Bridge designs theirs to 100% will be set up for solar panels.
Thank you. And will it be otherwise compliant with the legislation?
Yes,
You'll put in the
Yes.
conduits and everything, all right?
correct.
But at this point, you're not going to put solar panels on them yet, or will you be?
As of right now, no solar panel. They're designed to hold solar panel at 100%.
At 100%?
Yes.
Thank you.
And to be clear, that's 100% of the areas that are not used for other equipment like air conditioning units. And so a lot of times warehouses will support a portion of the building, like structurally support, say 40%, which is required. The structural support for 100% of the building will theoretically allow solar, but there will be portions of the rooftop used for other equipment.
But it'll be, the legislation requires a certain amount of contiguous surface so that you position your HVAC and everything so that you have that space, and that's what you're talking about.
Correct.
Correct. Thank you.
It'll work with the solar panels. We design it for 100%. Again, legislation only is requiring 40%.
Right.
So yeah, wherever our mechanical equipment goes, obviously there won't be any solar panel there, but it'll work in where there's massive fields of.
Right.
solar.
Some of it is not included in the legislation. It's
Correct.
correct. And just throwing this out here, have you considered looking at community solar as a possibility?
They may have,
Yeah,
That-
community solar.
We
Yeah.
we could have John at the next meeting talk
Yeah.
about it. Because of a medical issue that popped up, he couldn't be here tonight, but he's going to be at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. I'd like that.
The West Windsor Township Green Development Practices Checklist on page 3 discusses the solar, and the last sentence in the entry is the incorporation of said systems will be evaluated as tenants are identified with the proposed building. That's the
correct.
plan?
Yeah.
Yes, that is the plan.
Thank you.
On, okay, so on the dock sides, there'll be insulated metal docks. And the insulation will be to code. The docks will be surrounded by a seal, so when the truck backs in, it gets sealed in, so that keeps kind of the heat and coolness from going in and out of the building. Also throughout the walls, there'll be hollow metal man doors that'll be insulated, and those will act as ingress egress doors, and that's mainly for emergency use. Typically, those are not used by employees. All employees will go to the front doors. All the lighting inside and outside to the building will be LED lighting. All HVAC equipment, be it on the ground or up on the roof, will be to code, and it'll be energy efficient. I'm going to pull up a third exhibit, which is again, basically a corner entry rendering of B1. It's basically showing where it's kind of looking from.
Has this been marked for identification?
Yeah, let me mark this. Which one is this?
This entry perspective B1.
And so that's actually page 22 on the exhibit list, and we're going to mark it as A16.
And again, this entry exhibit is looking from the northeast to the building. And again, it's just emphasizing the main entrance here, which will have a lot of glass. It'll have a canopy feature. It'll be bumped out. It'll have some accents of blue and gray there. There'll be 3 different types of signage to the park. One will be a monument sign, one will be an instructional sign, and then there'll be building and address signage. The monument sign will be on the monument and instructional sign will be on a concrete pedestal base. It'll have like a masonry feature to it, and then there'll be a metal signage body. There'll be raised lettering. That'll be typically a metal or a plastic, and then both those signs will be illuminated. The building signage on the building will be tenant driven, and that could be made of metal or plastic, won't be illuminated. The address again will be a metal or plastic and not be illuminated.
Where will the tenant signage be placed on that white strip?
Well, as of right now, it could be over the front entry. It's subject to where they may want it. But typically it'll be over like the front entry.
Which would seem like that white strip would be more appropriate. That's over the front
And it
entry.
can be again.
I'm sorry?
It can be there
I think he's talking.
I mean, we're not trying to dictate it, just
down here. Yeah, but typically they'll want it up higher.
logical.
Christopher, is the intent of the applicant to come in with applications for signage as tenants come on board?
Only if it would differentiate it different from what we're showing today. Like we're showing a proposed format for a certain sign, and
Okay.
a certain,
Okay,
and if it doesn't meet with that, then we would come in. But if it meets with that, we're looking to get it reviewed and approved as part of this. Oh, I'm sorry. We're intending to, because this is a park, we have sort of a certain design for the park. So there is a sign package that we're showing and going through this evening. When a tenant comes in, we expect the tenant to conform to that. So as part of our plan tonight in our application is to get the signage approved at that certain scale with a couple of waivers. There's a few waivers involved, something that the board will go through at some point.
Yeah, and basically that's the building, if there's any questions.
Michael.
Yes.
Am I on? You've said at the start, you've testified like 20 to 30 times here in New Jersey.
Correct.
Okay, so within 50 miles of here, where, if I want to see one of your buildings, where can I go?
There's Cranberry. We're doing a park right down here in Hamilton County right now on the river. There's Phillipsburg. Perth Amboy, South Amboy.
The township of Hamilton? The township of Hamilton? You said.
Yes, yes.
Hamilton, Mercer County.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm
Oh, you got it?
basically done, yeah.
Okay.
Are there other questions for this witness? Thank you very much.
Okay, our next witness is our planner, John McDonough. John, I believe, was that works. You may have to grab that one. Spread out too much. So John, you're still under oath from the last meeting, but I believe we have to go through your qualifications. Can you tell us a little bit about your expertise, education, and other qualifications?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Duly acknowledged as the oath. My name is Sean McDonough, MC, capital DONOUGH, and I'm the project planner. I have a license here in the state of New Jersey as a professional planner. Also on a national level under the American Institute of Certified Planners. Again, a national certification. Both are current and in good standing. And I've testified here before and in all of your surrounding communities as well.
Any board objections to this witness being considered expert? So be it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'll let you take it from here. If you can tell us a little bit about what you've done in connection with the project.
Sure. We've conducted a standard planning analysis. We review existing conditions, proposed conditions. You've heard a lot of testimony, so I won't go through the highlights of it. We review the application against your zoning regulations, which really reflect the essence of what would be considered good planning. And then we see how the application stacks up against those zoning regulations. And again, that criteria for good planning. And the good news here is this application fully stacks up with your zoning regulations and is actually a variance-free application. So we're looking at very good regulations, very good zoning intent, and an applicant that fully conforms to all the requirements of your PCD planned commercial district, which we know has a legislative history here that switched from residential to non-residential, again, with concerns over what was, quote, residential strain on the area. And you just heard extensive traffic testimony of as this will have a modest impact considering what was contemplated here at one time. In terms of the zone.
This wasn't zone residential.
Yeah, I think what he meant to say was there was, it had the ability to be developed commercially and that the prior owner had looked at zoning it residential, asking the town to work through it. And then it ended up in litigation. So it was a concept, but not actually the zoning. The underlying zoning allowed uses like office uses and things like that.
But the legislative history raised concerns about residential strain at this location.
Yes.
So again, the zone intent is to supply a variety of, and I'm reading here, non-residential uses to facilitate redevelopment of the site. We know the history of the site. We're dealing with a supersized site here, north of 400 acres, actually 421, vacant, the former American cyanamide site, decommissioned industrial site. So it has had a long history of industrial, and we're moving this into a modern contemporary industrial use. We know that modernization is certainly considered and favored by planning as consistent with good planning. So what's nice about this application is that we are dealing with a permitted use. We're dealing with a necessary and essential use in today's climate. We know that this particular land use is an economic engine here in New Jersey. The warehouse and the logistics industry has certainly grown in importance. And as I said, an economic engine. Just some statistics for the board. 1 in 8 workers here in New Jersey work in the goods movement market. Why is that? Well, because of our excellent transportation system that has the capacity to carry goods back and forth. Situated between 2 major metropolitan areas, New York City and Philadelphia, and of course, great access to the ports, We see a spike of 19% in container activity over the last 5 years. COVID's only been 2 years. So this is certainly a use that was gaining currency before the pandemic and has only accelerated since the time of the pandemic, as we all have certainly learned how easy it is to do online shopping and have goods that, as I've said before, come to you as opposed to you having to go out to. Again, there are many positives to this application. That's the intent of the zone. And the application stacks up with all of those critical criteria, those use regulations. The use is permitted. All of the bulk controls are met here, including the lot dimensions, the area, the frontage, the width, the lot depth, the yard dimensions, including the front yard, the sides, the rear, the building separation, the building dimensions, the coverage, the height, again, building separation, and then substantial conformance with your design regulations as well. The architecture you just heard about, the rooftop solar, and the design standards for commercial structures as well. The relief that the applicant is seeking here are all design related, relatively modest. We're dealing with landscaping, lighting, parking, typical design criteria that most applications would need some form of relief from anyhow. And just to recount them for the board, number one is a bundle of parking related relief, off-street parking, as you just heard.
Michael, excuse me. I hope all board members have the list of waivers summarized.
We gave you a nice little snapshot there.
Thank you.
And I'm going to kind of bundle them. I'll take them a little bit out of order just so the board gets them in, I'll say, digestible chunks. The first is a bundle of relief related to parking and loading. The off-street parking requirement is a maximum of 1,754. As you just heard through Carl's testimony, 2001 spaces being provided here with the banking of the additional 200 comes out to 2,201. Which meets the operator experience level. You know, we're dealing with a experienced operator here that has managed, developed, and operated many similar facilities here. So we're relying upon that as an element of practicality to what the applicant is seeking from the board as reasonable and appropriate, which is the standard that applies whenever we're dealing with design exceptions, whether the design and the site plan remains appropriate, notwithstanding the deviations. You've heard that this is also consistent with industry standards. The ratio of 1 per 2,500 is a typical industry standard, and the applicant is meeting that here. So not only experienced by the owner operator, but the industry at large. And importantly, to me, from a planning standpoint, is that with the excessive parking, we don't trigger excessive coverage, which would in turn trigger excessive runoff and the like. So the applicant has done a good job of balancing meeting the coverage here and providing what is, I believe, reasonable from a parking standpoint in an industry, in a land use, and a business that requires fast, quick, and speedy delivery to the public. And having those spaces there results in operational efficiencies that effectuates the efficacy of this use and the purpose of this use.
Yeah, and if I could clarify for a second, this is a list, it's a township requirement, is a minimum. It's really not a minimum. As Carl testified, it's a set requirement.
It's an absolute requirement.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an exact 1,700.
I think that's the title of the section.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it's called exceeds, yeah, maybe. Well, exceeds minimum of off.
It would just be exceeds
yeah,
off-street, yeah.
Yeah. Correct. You have to hit it right on the.
Yeah,
right
right.
on the-
It's an exact standard. Likewise, I believe for the off-street loading of 147, you've heard a basis of engineering testimony in this regard as well, that the relief is reasonable and appropriate. Provided here is 910, which is also consistent with the industry standard of 1 per 5,000. Also consistent with this experienced operators ratios at similar sites as well. And again, importantly here, just like with parking compliance with respect to coverage, no coverage relief is triggered by the additional off-street loading spaces here. Again, it effectuates quick and speedy delivery having those spaces there to move product in and out, which is essential to the land use. That's the bundle of relief related to parking and loading. The second bundle of relief pertains to the detention basins. And you heard through Brian's testimony at the outset that we're dealing with detention basins here that are regularly shaped, whereas the ordinance wants naturally shaped basins or again, irregularly shaped basins. The reason for that is, well, first of all, the essence of the land use is that we're dealing with boxy structures. That's what these buildings are made of. They need to be efficient, and that typical industry standard, which relates to the development as a whole, which
Yeah,
is a
and
nice.
if you could point out what exhibit you're referring to, just
For
for
the
the record.
board, again, I could be referring to, let me refer to A4.
Okay.
I'm just grabbing whatever's in front of me. They all show the same basic thing. Exhibit A4, you've got the tan buildings showing the simple layout here, the nice balanced layout. And again, the structures, the detention structures, follow the lay of the land, follow the drainage patterns, and relate to the landform. Again, the nature of this land use is that it is laid out in a more gridded pattern as opposed to a curvilinear pattern that we may see with a residential type development or even a commercial retail type development. So the form basically follows the function here and results in those operational efficiencies that trigger the basin shape as being rectangular and regular as opposed to irregular. Likewise, there are 8 basins that are located within the buffer requirement. And you heard Brian say that there's 8 of those. The regulations do allow for a portion of the basin to be in the buffer, but only up to 50%. And there are 8 basins that actually exceed that. Brian walked you through that as part of his testimony. Again, the key justification and the mitigation for that relief is the fact that these basins are going to be planted. So visually, they are going to blend with the environment and essentially effectuate the purpose of a buffer, which is to provide a nice, soft green edge to the perimeter of the development. So for all of those reasons related to the shape and the location of the basins, we believe the standard of reasonableness and appropriateness is met as well. Third bundle of relief pertains to the trees, both the existing trees and the proposed trees. The existing trees, there's a requirement to survey locate trees of 5 inches or greater. And the applicant, again, is asking for relief in that regard. I believe the justification was to provide a sample plot that extrapolates into an overall number in terms of the overall site identification of the trees 5 inches or greater. Likewise, the proposed tree size is supposed to be 4 inches. You're supposed to have 4-inch tree calipers for every 40 feet of building, and they need to be located within 75 feet. The applicant is going to meet that standard within 100 feet for 350 trees, but the waiver request or the design exception is to be at 2.5 inches to 3 inches. Again, based on the sheer number of plantings here, I think we heard the number north of 20,000 trees being incorporated into this property. So it is going to be substantially green. This is not your old warehouse. This is the new warehouse, the new modern warehouse, which is substantially landscaped and also beautified with very attractive, high quality buildings as well. That's the nature of the land use. That the commitment is there to provide a high number of trees, create that biomass, but asking for relief with respect to that 4-inch requirement. Fourth bundle of relief pertains to the lighting levels. And it seems like with every application, we run into challenges with meeting lighting levels. We're trying to establish maximums, minimums. We're trying to establish averages in the middle as well. The key thing here, particularly with respect to our residential neighborhoods, is that there's not going to be any objectionable glare that exceeds your ordinance requirements on any portion of the perimeter of the property, but for the access points. The applicant is asking the board to move to exceed 3-foot candles at the intersection. Again, that's in the interest of public safety, and it's only, I'll say, an uptick above what that 3.0 standard is. maintaining the average of 0.5 around the, I'll say the basis of the property, particularly with no spillage onto lands outside. And then there's an average illumination requirement, 0.5 foot candles over the parking lot. The applicant is looking for relief to be at 1.7 to 2 for the car parking and 2.2 to 2.4 for the truck parking areas. Again, all in the interest of safety, maintaining reasonable, safe, efficient circulation, flow and function around the property, and having an adequately lit site. I think having the buildings as they are situated creates a sort of an armoring, if you will, of that lighting effect. And as I said, the key is what happens around the perimeter where the standard will be met.
Do we expect lighting to be 24-hour, 7 days a week?
I would say yes, unless council corrects me.
I think there will be definitely some component like security lighting will be on. We could have, John will be here next meeting and he could go through it in a little more detail. Or do we have somebody else? Oh, okay, yeah. We'll have our engineer. You typically do have some security component, and depending on the tenant's operation, it could be on.
Yes, Brian Waisner, Langen Engineering, sworn from last time. The intent at this time is to have the lights on in the loading areas and the parking areas overnight. Until we know the tenants and what operational needs and shifts they may have, it becomes very difficult to try to predict what lights stay on, what lights go off, when their shifts might end. So at this time, we're proposing to keep them on dusk till dawn.
Thank you.
And then the last batch of relief pertains to the sign package. There's 3 components to that. Again, the basis for the relief with respect to the sign package is essentially the sheer size of the development. This is developed and designed as a planned integrated industrial development with multiple buildings. The relief for signage is essential for safety, to provide for safe navigation, visual cues. You'll see on those signs, there's a lot of arrows pointing to numbers, which gets you to the various buildings. And that's what's triggering the relief for the sign package. First, the monument signage, the area of the sign is proposed at 60 square feet, whereas 48 is the maximum. Relatively modest increase over what would be allowed. It is a 4 foot wide by 8 foot high sign. This is typical of this particular brand's imaging. So with respect to brand familiarity, again, providing for an integrated model, identifying this particular brand. And also, again, in the interest of safety, the components of that sign include, again, addresses, identification, and wayfinding arrows to help navigate. Likewise, you've got the height of the sign, as I just said, is going to be 16 feet, whereas 4 feet is the maximum that's allowed. Again, that's to incorporate the entire site package, the branding, the identification of the center, and the address number as well. There are address signs that need relief with respect to the sign area, 24 inches versus 8 inches. These are just going to be numbers on the building 100, building 200. Again, the relief of 24 inches or 2 feet is reasonable given the sheer size of the buildings. An 8-inch number on a 100,000 or a million square foot building doesn't make practical sense from a planning standpoint. And we think there's good proportionality there. And then finally, again, we have these instructional or wayfinding signs, which are throughout the development with an area of 12 square feet versus 2 square feet being the maximum allowed, given the fact that they need to have a backdrop of multiple numbers, multiple arrows to, again, help drivers navigate safely through the site. A key aspect of the area request that makes them reasonable is that there is a significant amount of negative space or non-text, just a backdrop. So this is not going to produce the things that we would not want excessive signage to do, which is visual clutter or over branding. These are really, again, safety aids or navigation aids and not going to be over advertising. That's the bundle of relief that the applicant is asking the board to move on. Again, the list of conformance here is substantial in terms of the bulk criteria. The design exceptions are relatively modest and I think appropriate based on all the testimony on the record. And then I think the last thing that I'll say here, I don't know that it's relief being requested, but the applicant is asking the board to move on 10-year vesting here, which I believe is also reasonable and appropriate given the sheer size of the project. Quality takes time and it will take time to build out this development.
And Joey, the board has authority to grant that 10-year vesting?
Yes, it does.
Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, so what does that exactly mean? That in 10 years, if they don't finish, they have to come back?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
They would have to come back for an extension if they have not concluded the beginning of construction. And the 10 years starts from the date of final approval of the first, well, there would be final approval here.
Yeah, we're requesting it for both the for final for the phase 1 and for preliminary for the phase 2. And then somewhere within that 10-year period, we would come in for final for phase 2.
Okay.
And that starts when the board adopts the resolution?
Mhm.
When does the clock start?
Yes.
Can I ask a question regarding signage? A couple of things. On number 5, right? You said 60 square feet, but then you said 4 by 8. Is that?
I take that back. It's a total height of 16 feet. And I'm sure the detail.
No, number 5, you said it is 60 square feet. 4 by 8 wouldn't be 60 square feet.
Maybe it's I have to go back and look. It might be the pedestal, the
that
base.
just,
It's the base that it
Is
sits on.
that 60 square feet because your monument and then the sign part is 32 square feet?
To
on
get
the
to that
top part?
detail.
Do you have it handy? He has it handy.
You have it.
I'm looking at the detail on our signage. This is Brian Wisner from Langen.
Yeah.
The size of the sign where the wording is smaller.
Okay.
The overall size, including the outer
Including the
boundary,
brickwork or whatever it is.
Correct.
Got it, okay.
brings it up.
Another question on signage. The architect talked about when a tenant moves in, I guess you call it building naming rights at the top, facing out, so you could say, okay, I see so-and-so's in this building. I don't see anything on here. We have ordinances regarding the size of lettering and area of those types of signs, but I don't see anything on that. Are you saying that if you have a tenant come in and the naming rights of the building, you're gonna be in with our ordinance, you're gonna,
The applicant is not asking the board to move on any relief in that regard at this time.
okay. And not even the number of signs, because you have like E1 faces both Quaker Bridge Road, a main artery, and US Route 1. And, I just remember from when BlackRock came before the board, they didn't ask for 2 signs, but they probably could have, because it kind of faces 2 main roads. So you're not asking for relief on 2 signs as opposed, because we only allow 1.
We haven't, I can check with my client, but we have not been asked to move on that.
Okay,
It's not in our plans.
okay. Just want to make sure that you're thinking about it.
Thank you. I'm sure if we want to alter that, we will before the
come
hearings are
back.
closed out.
Because then you'll have to come before the board when your tenant moves in, you have to come before the board if you want to have lettering or area size of those naming rights signs different than our ordinance. And our ordinance is a lot, I'll let you look at it.
We'll give it a look and we'll come back if we think we need some relief. We'll define what that, right now I have no relief to ask for.
Just that we've had a lot of applicants come back and ask for relief on that particular ordinance after it was adopted several years ago. So just thought about it. Okay.
Thank you.
A lot of times that may happen with the tenant fit out. And so you see that And it may come back and require coming before the board, but you're right. If you can anticipate it beforehand and talk to the board about it, it's definitely a much better approach.
Right, because you're talking about a very big building.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna look at putting I don't remember what the ordinance is, anybody? The lettering? No,
The
letter-
24 inches is what the address signs?
No, not the address sign, the naming of the building, like the height of the letters. I forgot the height. Could be 18 inches, or maybe 12 inches. And you're gonna put, and it's gonna be a short name on that bill. Let's say short name tenant. And you're gonna put on a 1 million square foot building, 12-inch high letters in the corner of the building. They won't see it until they get to that building.
Loud and clear. I think we get it. We're going to look at what's proportionate, and when we get there, we'll ask
Okay.
the board to move on if we need to.
The
Okay.
we
the
feel-
board is not going to finalize its decision on any of these waiver requests, so we can revisit this issue at the next meeting.
Understood, Mr. Chairman.
Are there other questions by board members to this witness? Yes, Simon.
I'm just curious about the numbering on these warehouses. Just for emergency services perspective, are these buildings all planning to be Coleman Drive, or are they going to have other addresses like a number on Quaker Bridge Road or a number on Clarksville Road, or one of those intermediate drives is going to be named something else?
I think we'll have to work with your post office and what the actual street identification is of these particular buildings. But the applicant's asking the board to move on a number for each one of these buildings. I don't know what the actual addresses will be.
Simon, I think our engineering department approves them before they can do that, because the Avalon is going through that process. That's why I know. Yeah.
There'd be engineering, probably fire department as well.
Yeah, fire department. as well.
Okay,
Gina, I just had a question. You know, there was an interesting article in the New York Times business section in the last several days, which indicated the data indicated that online shopping had decreased for the first time ever, and in-person shopping had increased for the first time ever in 2021. Do you have any sense of whether this has any impact on, and that might just be a function of the pandemic and people wanting to get it back outside, but do you have any sense of whether that has any impact on what's being proposed? I suspect not, but.
The short answer is no, and it could certainly be a people getting out of the house spike, if you will, going back out to eat again, buying products in a store. That said, we look at the trend in this industry predating the pandemic. It's certainly accelerated, but this was a use that was certainly gaining currency beforehand. And I gave the board a number of 5 years, a 19% spike in the containers. This land use feeds off of the containers, and the ports are right there.
all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We'll have further discussion at the next meeting. As I indicated at our initial meeting last week, this room is being used early in the morning for some of our senior citizens, and therefore it must be totally knocked down tonight and reset for tomorrow morning. So unless there are any objections from, well, let me first say, for those of you who are here as interested parties to this, spread the word. I'm hopeful that we will get to a point at next week's meeting where we can take public input from the members of the audience. Sam, do you have anything to offer? So therefore, if no objections from the board members, I will adjourn tonight's meeting at 9:36 p.m. and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, and just for the record, it's clear